All right. Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is a very exciting installment of Spirits in the Material World. I have a very special guest with with me today, Jeremy Brown, who is an incredible healer. Yes, amazing being in the world, pretty hilarious, um, as you'll come to find out. So we're going to have a conversation today about some of the work that he's doing, in particular Akashic Records, because yeah, that's definitely one of your specialties. And
Yeah, I was one of the first people to do it professionally.
so, what exactly? Well, one, I want you to introduce yourself a little more than I did, and just share a bit about the healing work that you do as Jeremy the Healer.
Okay, I mean, you did an amazing job. So there's
Hey.
not much to add. I'm Jeremy from Jeremy the Healer, and I started Jeremy the Healer about 5 years ago now, maybe six. I know it was like legitimized 5 years ago, for sure. But a lot of the work that I get attuned to requires you to do like a month for free or some time for free to get mastery under it. Some of those things that I've been attuned to are working in the Akashic Records. As far as I know, I was one of the first people to use the phrase Akashic Healer. Um, Now I hear it a lot. I hear it a lot. I hear it everywhere. The other thing that I do besides the Akashic Records, and I'll get into what the Akashic Records are later, but I do Reiki. So I'm a Reiki master, Usui Reiki master, and Karuna Ki Reiki master and teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And what else? Tarot. I do sound baths, which are some of my all-time favorites. And in the realm of like shamanism, I use sound baths to incorporate the work that I do with shamanism. And in shamanism, one of my most profound things that I actually offer is shadow work.
Yes.
So working with people to heal their shadow, to integrate their shadow, to fall in love with their shadow self, and really, to be honest with you, to understand what shadow even is. Because a lot of people have profound misunderstandings of what shadow is, and the climate of what today is ties into a lot of that. So what we're going to talk about with our Akashic Forum talks about why people disassociate from shadow or think that things that are dark are bad or things that are negatively charged are harmful. And those are not the same things. And we can get into that later too.
Oh, I love that. Yes, I'm going to try to remember that. But in the meantime, can you share a bit more about Akashic Records, what that actually means, what they are,
Sure.
since there is a little bit more interest or understanding, or the language is bubbling up, but it still seems like a relatively new field, or like a new medium that people are understanding for healing.
Yeah. We probably are familiar with the term Akasha or the word Akasha because if you know Anne Rice, if you know Aaliyah, right? Akasha, Queen of the Damned, she was like the original vampire. I understood it as an ancient Kemet word when I was younger. That's how I learned it. Now all the research that I find ties it to Sanskrit, which is same, similar region, similar time, Mesopotamian versus Kemet, which is Egypt.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I just found out and discovered in my own research that Kemet means dark world.
Oh,
Right?
wow.
Right? I was like, Kemet. And they were like, Kamat. It's like, it comes from the idea that this was the dark continent. This was where the dark skinned people, the original people came from. So I loved that. But anyway, Akasha is a Sanskrit word or possibly a Kemetic word that means primal source or first, the origin of. And when we think about the Akashic Records, what that is a vibrational frequency or library that a lot of people call it a library, but it's like all of the stored vibrations of every soul's journey. So it's, if you imagine it as source, Akasha, and if you imagine that source gives of itself or lends itself to us to have souls,
Okay.
then our entire soul's journey, everything that is said about us, our name, everything has its own vibration. Those vibrations hit our soul and then join the Akashic Records.
Mm.
So everything that is, was, and will be is stored within that frequency or within the Akasha. When we go into or tap into the Akashic Records, I go in through sacred prayers, mostly. Um, when you go into the Akasha, you tap into those frequencies, and usually you're picking out one specific soul's vibration and you're asking what that soul's journey is.
Mm. Wow. So how did you even find out about this and get into it, since you had been doing, Reiki and tarot, and also too, this is one thing that I think is really fascinating. You were a pastor, a Christian pastor.
A Christian minister. I never got elected to pastor.
Oh, I didn't even know that there was like a difference. So that says a lot about me.
Pastor is like the shepherd of the entire herd, if you will. And a minister is someone who assists the pastor. It's like a viceroy.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. So I had to throw that out there.
No, thank you. Thank you for
yeah, I think that's like an important part of your journey, and I think your frameworks too.
Yeah.
That still shows up. But so how did you find out about Akashic Records, or even come to decide you wanted to learn about them and use and connect with Akashic Records?
It's interesting. When I was a minister, and this is a part of the story that I don't readily share, you always want to be careful not to sound completely crazy. Right, to the muggles or the laymen, like you don't want to sound completely insane. However, I was an anointed prophet when I was a minister, and so certain gifts are in certain types of Christian church, certain gifts are acknowledged, and the gift of prophecy was seen in me. So I very much believe that in that time I was tapping into the Akashic Records, and I would use language that got me into trouble then, and now this is the language that people use to identify Akashic Records. But I would say things like, I can see people's true selves when I'm in that state, whatever that prophetic state was. Whenever I got a word from God or I got a message for someone, I could see their true self. Now, back then people would say, that's arrogant, and who are you to tell people who their true selves are? That was the turmoil I went through then. Now, in the Akashic Records, that's the language that's used, is that the Akashic Records bring you to someone's soul level truth. So that's what I was always tapping into. Now, when did I consciously start tapping into the Akashic Records? One time, around 15 years ago, in LA, when I had around first moved out here, I was writing a script, and it was a comic book series. And one of my characters, they all had mutant powers. One of my characters stumbles across the Akashic Records. She didn't call it that. She called it the Hall of Records. Now that name downloaded to me when I was meditating. I was just like, what is she finding? And they were like, the Hall of Records. And I'm like, okay. Fast forward 10 years, which was 5 years ago. I'm doing swaps or trades and bartering with my friend. I transitioned out of corporate America. I said, no more. I won't say I'll say it this way. I decided that I never wanted to make money for another person again, especially if they weren't a part of the communities that were prevalent in my visage, in my world, in my life. I was tired of feeding other people's success and wealth and not generating my own that I could pass down via legacy or to my family in the form of abundance, return to my own communities. I didn't want to feed the billionaires, right? So 5 years ago, I walked away from all of my corporate stuff, and I started living off of bartering with friends. And I was doing these prophetic readings because I didn't think you could charge money for spiritual work. And he goes, what do you call what you do? And I said, I don't know, a spiritual healing, spiritual reading, whatever. And he goes, I want you to meet my friend, Helen, who does the Akashic Records. And I think he told me in February of that year. I didn't go see Helen until August. And then it was like, August 30th or something like that, I get attuned and I start Jeremy the Healer September 5th.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it was that like.
It was super fast because I was tired of starving. I was tired of not having wealth. I was tired of not having money, and I was tired of working for other people. My production company had all but collapsed because I dissolved it with my partner, my business partner, and we went our separate ways. He got married. He and his wife did their own thing. So I just got tired of relying on other people. And I was like, oh, you know what? I'm going to start my own business. And that's where Jeremy the Healer came from. That's where my introduction to the Akashic Records came from. And then it was, once we talk about how the records work, you'll understand that it was one thing led to the next. And it was everything that I needed to know that I was standing in my own way.
Mm. So, what can you share about how it works? Like, if I mean, I've done Akashic Records readings with you before,
Yeah.
but for other folks, what does that look like, and what can you share about the process?
Um, the way that I usually do it, so let's start how it usually works. Linda Howe, who is another teacher of mine, my first teacher is Helen von der Heide. I love her, shout out to her. And she's very well known in LA. She's the reason that it went from like 3 of us doing this professionally in LA to like 300 of us doing this professionally. She's dope, and people continuously come to her, and she holds classes at least 5 times a year, right? So there's this constant introduction to the records and new people coming in, which is awesome because this is something that everyone can do. You don't have to be psychic. You don't have to be prophetic to do it. And you'll feel the difference when you're working with people. I don't like the way that that sounds, because it sounds like you can tell when someone has done it before because of their natural inclinations and gifts, versus when someone is learning how to read the records and it's opening their intuition.
Ah,
But what's awesome about the records is, because I don't want it to sound tiered, anyone can do it. We can read our own records. We can read records for other people. That process generally looks like, if you're following Linda Howe, who is my teacher's teacher and now my teacher, you go through what's called the pathway prayer.
mm-hmm.
And the pathway prayer is a prayer that leads you to the heart of the Akasha. So it's this light and love and all good things and all high vibes only. It's a safe space in the Akashic Records where you can tap into the energy and find out people's soul level truths and give them information. You open through that pathway prayer, you go to the heart of the Akashic Records. You as the reader basically fall in love with the person and their story. Because we're not psychic and it's not a psychic modality, it's a spiritual modality, you ask questions. So if you go to an Akashic reader and they ask you questions, don't think, this mofo don't know how to read the records. It's not like, when I first started doing this, I would always rise to the occasion, and I struggle with this word, but I'm going to use it for sake of argument. I happen to have psychic abilities or prophetic abilities. So when people would come to me and say, I don't know, you tell me, what do you see? I would rise to the occasion. I would ask my spirit guides, like, what do you want me to tell this fool who's testing my power? Like, you know what I mean? But that's not how the Akashic works. When people come to you, you're meant to ask them, what brings you here? What do you want? Because it's a spiritual modality and not about psychic. It doesn't disempower the person who's getting read. It actually empowers them to take control of their destiny, to understand that they have free will and their choices are shaping the records.
Mm-hmm.
So if I go to the records and I say, when am I gonna fall in love?
Mm-hmm.
The records are gonna say, I don't know, when are you gonna fix all 7 of your chakras, align your ascension column, and you get your life together. That's when you're gonna be open to falling in love, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then they'll proceed, your masters, teachers, and loved ones are the guides that we encounter in the records. Then they'll proceed to tell you all the times that love was at your front door and you weren't ready to receive it because you hadn't done the work, right? That's what I love about the Akashic Records. It's about personal empowerment, because I'm strong, you know me from the way that I approach healing. I really do believe that, first of all, no other human can heal you. A healer holds space so that you finally can relax and feel safe encountering yourself in a loving way. and start to do the healing on your own. They ignite the healer within you, right? People sometimes give me tongue in cheek about Jeremy the healer, and they're like, we're all healers. And I'm like, that's exactly what the name means. I'm Jeremy the healer. You're
Yes.
Anna the healer. That's Jeff the healer. That's Jacoby the healer. Like, yes, that's exactly what it means. So even people who are trying to be tongue in cheek, they're falling into my own like ensnarement. I'm like, exactly, yes. It's all about personal empowerment. It's all about um, a conscious consent. That was the phrase I was searching for. Conscious consent, consensually healing yourself, being actively participatory in your process, not expecting someone else to save you, not waiting for your hero, your savior, not being a martyr, but actually engaging with your path and your journey. And the Akashic Records guides you and says, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but this is what's going to serve your highest good. This is what's going to serve your lowest good. This is what happens if you play it this way. This is a possible future. This is a possible future. This is a possible future. And then as you start to make choices, those possible futures focus, they close out, they shut down.
That, I mean, that is a whole entire direction that we could go into. But I feel like that's an entire longer conversation. And you and I have had multiple conversations about free will, destiny, and, you know, like, how do we, like, how does free will play into readings, or like the things that you're told, and then like you make your own choices, and you're like, but wait, I was supposed to have X, Y, and Z or whatever, and you know, some of the things around that. But I'm going to table that.
Okay.
I want to say something real quick. No, you want to go, so I'm going to let you say something about that.
No, because I will go on forever. You know me, that Gemini, we're both air signs. This will go on forever, and then
3
you're
hours,
going to edit out. So, it is about free will. It's about you making those choices. I could, we could do a reading today, right now, and then you hear the reading and go, you know what? I don't want that. I'm being called to be a healer, and that's the path that my Akashic Records told me. I don't feel ready. I'm not doing that. I'm out in these streets, and your records, the reading changes because of the choice that you made in that moment.
Right.
And that possibility still existed in the record. So it's not like you fooled the masters, teachers, and loved ones. It's that you heard what you needed to hear in the moment to get you to make the choices you were going to make anyway, to be complicit in your path and your journey. And that's a really scary and powerful thing to discover when you start working in the Akasha, because the onus then falls on you for some of the things in your life that you are not necessarily ready to take full responsibility for. Yes. The gift in that, because that's the hard part, right? That's a challenge. But the way that the universe works is that if it's going to be a challenge, it also is a gift. And so the gift in that is discovering that you actually have the power to change your life, your reality, your world, that other people can't control you, that other people can't dominate you. And I can't think of a more important message in everything that we're seeing than the idea that you can't be dominated or controlled by someone else. And I teach my students that dominance over other people is false. So whether you're the spiritual leader or teacher and you think, I'm the teacher, I'm in control. No, if you're not learning from your students, then you're a sucky teacher.
Yeah, that's right.
Right? Like that's, and if your students if you're not preparing your students to be more powerful and better at what you're doing than you are at your stage, like they're not going to be now. That's highly unlikely. I guess it could happen, but I'm never threatened by my students, right? What I'm hoping is that when they get to 25 years of what I'm doing, that they're way better at it than I am at my 25 years of doing what I am doing. That's the whole point of passing information down, is that it changes and migrates and integrates with new things and becomes even better than it used to be. So if you're a part of a cycle, you're hoping that whomever you're passing the information is stronger and more powerful and more enlightened than you are. Or you're a shitty teacher.
That's real. I mean, I think that's, and I think that illustrates how teachers do or do not have their ego involved in what they're doing, you know, in letting go of or understanding that being a teacher, like you said, is passing on information and like supporting others in integrating that into themselves and really utilizing that in ways for them to like be their highest self, live their best life, whatever the thing you want to say is, you know.
It's
um,
like raising a kid for a very short
right,
period of time with on a very specific, like, yes, when we are thinking about having our children, we're like, I want Johnny to be a blah, 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 blah. But when you meet Johnny, you
right,
just want Johnny to be happy and be the
that's
best Johnny he can be.
that's right, that's
Yeah.
right, that's right. So what you were saying about, you know, we've talked about, or even like in my own readings and records readings, I'm like, wait, like, I don't want to hear that. You know what I'm saying? Or there's been times where I've had a whole ass attitude because
As
I'm
well
like,
you should.
it's true. I'm like, what are you telling me I need to do? You know, and then sometimes um it kind of happens inevitably. Do you know what I'm saying? And I'm like, okay, well, I could have actively chosen this, or here it is anyway, you know. But I'm thinking about, because we're going to be doing this Akashic Forum.
Hmm.
Uh,
Healing racism.
yes, which we decided this before George
Yeah.
Floyd's murder. It was just something that like bubbled up in my spirit and Jeremy's collectively of like, let's talk about this. Um,
Yeah.
and it's something you and I have talked about for a long time of like wanting to access the records for the United States, or, you know, doing these different ways of using the messages in the records to talk about bigger things. Like it's one thing to talk about like, when am I going to get a new job? Or like, who's my new boo? Or all these kinds of things that are more, you know, personal.
Yeah, like in magic, we call it low magic versus high magic. So, like, low magic is things that, and I know it sounds like it's, again, it's being tiered, but
Mm-hmm.
it's not like qualifying the tier. It's just saying one thing is about your lower self or your lower vibrational needs, your person.
Right.
And then high magic or high elevated things are more about the universe and the world around you.
So if we're saying, you know, if we're talking about free will and, you know, what we're planning to do is open the records around racism, which is insane and also really timely and also super important. And I'm really curious about just what, you know, what comes up. How does things like free will, how does that apply? Like I get that in terms of the like lower magic or the personal thing,
Yeah.
but is there something that it's like a collective decision? Is it individuals decisions? Like what, how does free will play into that, something so massive and something that's been um a part of our world for like millennia at this point?
I almost want you to save that question for the Akashic Forum.
Okay.
And but I am going to talk about it in a second. But I also want to just talk, like, the Akashic Forum is this thing, this forum that I host, well, I attend and have guest hosts come in so that I can open the records around topics that are important to the guest host. You know, and I together, but you also, as you know, choosing racism and healing racism, and very much, because at first I sent you a flyer with like racism and you're like, can we? And I'm like, okay, healing racism, right? Because we do want everyone to feel welcome, and we do want people to know that this space is about love and compassion. It is about how are we going to progress together, not how do we alienate people who have benefited from racism. No, right? However, that could be a question, not how to alienate them, but how do we work with or incorporate and heal with people
Mm-hmm.
who have benefited from racism? That might be a question.
Mm,
So it's this thing that I'm doing monthly in the Akashic Forum. What we do is open the records of the specific topic that is being talked about, and the guest host asks the majority of the questions. They moderate other questions from the audience. So that's a really dope question. Free will and anything spiritual. And this is my understanding I know my ATR people are going to be like, "Ah, rah, 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 rah,
Yes,
rah,"
we are.
because some of this African tradition, like traditional African religions and African derivative religions,
Okay.
part of the diaspora, hoodoo, voodoo, gully geechee, all of that stuff. And if I'm saying something wrong, correct me. Um, but yes, I have a Christian background, so you will hear that resonating in some of my understanding. But even in my when I was a Christian leader, I kept my cynicism, I kept my skepticism, and I never just fell in line with colonized Christianity or
Mm-hmm.
European Christianity. That is not my identity. I always followed the Godhead. I always knew that God was, or the divine was feminine and masculine. That's my disclaimer.
Mm-hmm.
However, all of that said, this world is our world. The materia, Malkuth, Earth,
Mm.
whatever you want to call it, three-dimensional plane or third-dimensional plane, 3D living, this low vibrational space is ours. We have dominion over this space. No spirit, no entity, no collective, no consciousness, nothing ethereal, including the divine itself, interferes with our home and our land and realm without our conscious consent,
Okay.
right? If you are being manipulated by a spirit in any way, whatever that means to you, an entity, it is because another human
Mm-hmm.
invited that thing into this world and spoke it into your life, your family, your
Mm-hmm.
generational curse, whatever those things are. And I'm trying to be really careful with language because I don't want people to associate harm with things that can happen. It could be a beneficial. You could have guardian angels, like those things watch over us in the spirit realm, but we have control over everything that occurs in the three-dimensional plane.
Okay.
That's free will.
Mm-hmm.
That is the collective consciousness of humanity saying, you know what? White people are better than black people.
Mm-hmm.
The spirit world is like, what the hell is a white person?
Mm-hmm. Like we don't understand that.
Like, where did white people come from? Oh, okay. Wait, oh, you're adding. Okay, now Italians are white because, 10 years ago they were, okay. Who else? Oh, didn't you hate the Irish? But now they're white. Oh, okay, right? So it's like the spirit realm doesn't think like that. They don't process information, and they also don't experience the world linearly as we do. So they're like, but white, black.
Yeah. What's a month versus a year, like a day, a minute? Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So that's how free will comes in. That's how longevity of free will. And shamans will say, this is but a dream. And we're collectively making this reality, or we're creating this dream. So however you want to approach it, it falls on humans to determine what we consider reality. We accept the fact that someone can march into our homes, drag us out by our necks, and hang us. Then that's the reality that we have accepted, and that's the reality that exists. If we say that's never going to happen, then it's a reality, but all of humanity has to say, that's not who we are, that's never going to happen. And again, I don't want to get too deep, and I don't want to steal the thunder from the forum, and I also don't have the Akashic Records open.
Right.
So this is all Jeremy speaking, and my experience and my guides, but not the Akasha per se. But we're seeing Black Lives Matter has been doing what they're doing for years. This movement is not new, and before Black Lives Matter, like I'm here for giving all the Black women for Black Lives Matter the credit. Hoo-yah. But before it was even that organized, and I know people don't think Black Lives Matter is organized, but it is.
Listen, thank you for saying that. Okay.
Right. And they do have leaders, and what I love about the leadership is that you can't pin it on one person, so you can't assassinate them.
Exactly.
But anyway, Black Lives Matter and this movement is not new.
Right.
But what is new is the alliance, the allyship
Yeah.
You know, that's what I say, alliance, because I'm just like, where did that word allyship come from? I don't like making up words, but the allyship, right? The alliance of white people who have been either privileged or benefited or have access to or didn't even know they were benefiting or had privilege and are starting to understand all of that awareness and awakening. People in Milan saying Black Lives Matter this time around, you know, all of that stuff is what we're seeing that's creating the shift. And I'm not mad at them for taking as long as they did because they had to wait until Uranus was in Taurus. So, so get it, right? This is where
Again, a whole other forum, right?
right, a whole nother forum. And I know I go down the rabbit holes.
You know I'm here for this.
Right, right.
I'm
But
my Gemini brother. It's okay.
You know what it is. This Uranus and Taurus energy is the energy that we experience when we have great revolution in the world, right? Every 80 or so, 60 or so years, we're going to see these shifts because that's what Uranus does. It moves into Taurus and it's just like, yo, let's just, try not to curse. Let's just F some S up.
That's real. You know about me and my mouth, so.
Yeah, right. So, and we need that when we start to, I don't want to get into astrology, but when we start to focus and understand the energies of the universe, which is how I use astrology.
Right.
Again, because you can tell I'm big on free will. So I do not use astrology to say you are predestined to be this person. Right. But there are seasons in the universe, just like there are seasons in our planet. And one of the seasons that we are in universally right now is rebellion and revolution and large, massive change. But that is the free will. That is us checking in with our traditions and saying, you know what, we gave this 80 or so years, we gave this 200 years, we gave this some time, and it's not working.
Right.
So let's change it. And we need more than just 12% of the world to say, hey, I don't like this, let's change it. We need the majority to consent and say, this is the shift that we're moving towards. Black Lives Matter. Everyone is human and matters. It's ridiculous. Eugenics is ridiculous. Division is ridiculous. Like, let's just talk about how we can heal humanity and come together and work together to develop the reality that doesn't feel like hell for any of us.
Right. That's right. That's right. I love the way that you said that. And I feel like that's an excellent place for us to stop and just to do a little promo for the we're gonna do promo for Akashic Forum, because that what you said, it's about like a collective free will, you know, thinking about that, and what I'm really interested in is how our individual actions, beliefs, thoughts, like how we show up as individuals. We all have free will, right? But how are we using that collectively, like to what you're saying, to create a reality that's equitable, create a reality that's safe, for us, for Black folks, for, you know, queer people. I mean, for everybody, you know. I had to stop myself from cursing too.
I'm like, are we not cursing? Like, why aren't we cursing?
Doesn't matter. I mean, this is, maybe it's because I haven't had coffee yet that I haven't cursed. So I'm still toned down.
I wake up in the morning and I stretch and I'm just like, it's a brand new fucking day.
That sounds,
I don't know. That's part of my prayer. Thank you for this brand new fucking day.
So when are we doing this again? Are we doing it June 20?
June 20th for the Akashic Forum.
Yes.
They can go to, it's on the website, jeremythehealer.com. They can follow you on Instagram or check it out on your Instagram. They can check it out, and I'll leave it open for you to say what your Instagram is.
Oh, I'm Jana Zinzi at JANNAZINZI on all the socials.
I love it. That's so easy. Now I'm like, oh God. They can check it out at Jeremiah 1 and 5 or Jeremy A, JEREMYA, the number 1, the letter N is in Nancy, the number 5, Jeremiah 1 and 5. Or just type in Jeremy the Healer and it should come up on Instagram and on all social media. And of course, jeremythehealer.com front page, scroll down and
Yeah.
click on that Akashic forum. We'd love to have you. $25 is the asking price. Becoming a little bit more flexible right now, but right now that's the price. But given everything that we've been through, let me or Jana know if you just, for whatever reason, can't afford that right now and you'd love to attend the forum, and we'll work something out.
Excellent. Yes, 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 absolutely. And then also, I'm going to plug Jeremy's Shadow Self Meditations, done a bunch of those, incredible.
Thank you.
Always learning something when I do the Shadow Self Meditation.
I love those.
Me too. I mean, I'm like, they're fun, but that sounds really a little morbid.
I always laugh because I used to teach the class on a Friday, as you well know. And I used to say, so what brings you all here on a Friday night to face your deep traumas?
And I remember you'd be like, okay, guys, don't go to the club after this. Like, you're going to be hella open.
I just healed some deep core wounds, faced some trauma.
That's right.
Why not have a drink and party in a public place?
Exactly
Because
right.
we'll develop more core wounds and make bad choices.
Exactly. That's where free will is like,
Kick in the pants.
Basically. So yeah, I'm really excited to do this. Thank you so much for this conversation. I'm always learning so much.
Yeah.
Akashic Records fascinates me. And it's been an interesting guiding force, for lack of a better word. You know, just, I've learned a lot, and it's been able, like, to see over time, to see my own development and to see things that you shared with me from my records and how they like have or have not come to be. And I don't mean that in a bad way. It's again, it's part of that, like, the spectrum of opportunity and the spectrum of what life could, you know, bring us, depending on the choices we make. And it's not, I also want to just say, it's not just like these linear things like, I'm going to choose to go left instead of right, or like, I'm going to choose to, you know, go to apply for school, or I'm not, you know. It's sometimes these like bigger ways of being, I think, that, to your point, are much deeper.
Yeah.
And actual, just like these low level baseline, I would say, root chakra choices. It's how you are choosing to grow your spirituality, grow your spiritual connection, your choices of like, how do you process and then take that information and utilize it into your decisions, right? So that,
well said.
Thank you. Because I mean, I think that's the gift of time too, and maturity on some level, like a spiritual maturity of understanding that it's not like, oh, well, I do this thing and then this is going to happen, you know, because I've been caught up in that so much and been so disappointed and been tearing shit down and crying and acting a whole ass fool. And also what I will say is trying to will things to happen because I'm like, well, the Akashic Records told me that this is going to happen. So let me, you know, do triple axels, backflips, and fucking somersaults to try to like make this thing that I think is supposed to happen.
Yeah.
In actuality, it was not, I don't know if I want to say like meant to be, but not interpreted in the way that I necessarily thought, you know, and like coming to a peace and a realization about that has been a process for me.
And sometimes when you listen to the records, let me say, I'm trying to think about what I had it so clearly, and then I was like, no, I don't want to cut you off. But sometimes when you do what the records tell you to do, or you follow the advice, by the time the thing that you were expecting or wanting so badly comes to you, you don't even want it anymore. And that's kind of the catch-22 with the records too, is that you get into this situation where you're like, I want true love. I want my significant other. And the record said that I got to do this thing. So this is you walking, by the way. So you're like walking along, right. You're speed walking for some reason in the park towards your destiny. And you're like, I'm going to do this thing. And really your masters, teachers, and loved ones were like, not manipulating you, but talking to your higher self and saying, you need to get here. Then
Mm-hmm.
you get there and you're just like, your whole reading was about why Jacob doesn't like you and how do you get Jacob and Jacob. And then by the time you do the work that the records advised and nurtured you through, the masters, teachers, and loved ones nurtured you through, you're just like, who is Jacob? I don't want that F boy over there. Jacob's life is ratchet. He was about to steal my soul and destiny.
See? Oof.
Right? So it's just having that framework and
Right.
having that understanding, like you said. That's why I love the way you put that. It's the time
Mm-hmm.
answering, because again, we're tapping into a source that
Mm-hmm.
exists outside of space time. It does not see us linearly, it sees us all at once.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's the topic we said we weren't going to talk about predestination, but these entities see our whole selves. And
Right.
so oftentimes they can be talking to our higher self when people do ask love questions.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm beating up on love questions right now. I don't know why,
That's
but
okay.
because they're totally natural questions to
Yeah,
ask.
that's fair.
But you ask this question about it, how does someone else feel about me, or how can I make our relationship work, or blah 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 blah, and they see you whole and complete, and they see everything that's going to happen to you, and they're like, that's not even important anymore.
Right.
That's not even going to matter to you by the time you get to your actual soul's purpose,
Mm-hmm.
which purpose is, I should say, because our souls have more than one purpose, but Jacob is not a part of your soul's purpose.
Right. That's right. That's right. And I think that there's like a process of release in some of that,
Yeah.
and understanding like our temporal kind of desires, or the things like from our vantage point at this fixed moment in time. Um, this is what I envision for myself. This is what I want for myself. This is how it has to be. And that through some of the Akashic Records work, it is like taking you to that like 30,000 foot level of like, yes, you do want these things, you know what I mean? But there's like this kind of bigger things floating above for you to deal with.
Thank you. That's what I was saying. I know I lost my train of thought, but I didn't know how. They
No,
can,
yeah.
yeah, they can be communicating to you via your higher self and giving you insight on Jacob,
Mm-hmm.
his higher self. And
Mm-hmm.
if Jacob isn't tapped into his higher self, even if he truly is in love with you, he may not choose you.
Right,
And that's his free will.
right, right, right,
Right.
right.
And the records, if we're in your records, I'm not going to see Jacob's records because they don't work, that the records are not intrusive. Right?
Mm.
This is not a psychic reading. This is not like, oh, I had a Reiki student who's no longer my Reiki student. You'll understand why in 2 seconds. In the middle of class, they said, and that's their pronoun, they said, oh, you can just tap into someone's energy and read their minds and do this and do that. That is not how any of the things that I use work.
Right.
It's about consent. It's about participation. It's about honoring other people's sovereignty and free will and empowerment. It's not about dominating or having special powers or mutant ability to do something because you have deemed it right. That's not the energy that I tap into. So when we deal with the Akashic Records, they're not going to tell me how Jacob feels about you unless it directly impacts your energy. They're not
Mm.
going to say Jacob is going to fall in love with you and choose you. They may say Jacob loves you. You
Mm.
two are soulmates. You have a karmic destiny together. But guess what? Jacob may choose to postpone that to a next lifetime and not this lifetime.
Right.
Right.
Motherfuckers got time out here.
I'm not trying to come back, but Jacob might be. So,
It's like,
sorry, Jacob. I got 752 soulmates, and you only one.
thank you. Sorry, Jacob, you missed out, boo boo.
Right. I'm moving on, dude.
I don't know if we'll be here next lifetime. So
That's between you and Erica Badu. Y'all can see each other next lifetime. I'm going to work my shit out in this lifetime and elevate. Hopefully not coming back unless it's as an ascended master, teacher, loved one for
oh
someone else.
my gosh, so funny. On that note, I'm going to close this up because
Because we could do this all day.
it's all day.
And it's 12:12, so it's the
Oh,
perfect time.
perfect. Yay. So again, please follow Jeremy the Healer. He's amazing.
And Janice and Zig.
Thank you. and I'm excited about this Akashic Forum. Thank you so much, Jeremy. This is going to be fun, and we're going to be doing more of these conversations.
We have to, and it's your energy is just so amazing and so delightful, and
Aww.
I'm looking forward to it. I hope people are doing your burlesque dance, especially with you. I know you have 4 more weeks left, so if it's not too late for them to dive into your burlesque series, I hope they take advantage of that and check you out and see what they can get out of that as well.
Thank you. Me too. I've learned a lot about teaching, you know, to go back to our conversation before, and holding containers and holding space, especially in this time. So it's been a blessing for me. So, all right, June 20th, 6 p.m. Eastern. I mean, rather Pacific, and 9 p.m. Eastern. I'm like, we're based in LA.
Right.
So, yeah, I'm really looking forward to it, and we'll be doing this again soon.
Yeah, bring friends and come with an open mind and an open heart to talk about how to heal racism and how it's affected you.
That's right. Excellent.
Namaste.